Hi, I'm Evan. I thought love meant showing up every time without question. For years, I paid her tuition, covered her rent, even sold my truck to help her chase her dreams. She once told me I saved her life, but somewhere along the way, she rewrote the story, erased me from it completely. I wasn't her partner anymore, just a name she remembered when she needed something signed. How do you know when you've given too much?
She once told me I saved her life. Now she says I'm holding her back. It was easier when I was still tired enough to believe her. The transfer went through at 12:08 a.m. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even blink. My thumb hovered over the screen of my phone, watching the final payment slide into the abyss of what used to be our future. Just like that, $10,000 gone. Tuition, complete. Mission, accomplished. Across the hall, Clara had fallen asleep at her desk again, a blanket tossed over her shoulders, hair pulled into a loose bun that was unraveling the way she used to after a long shift behind the cafe counter. That version of her felt like someone I used to know, before the recruiters, before the ambition hardened, before she learned to say things like my trajectory and our values no longer align. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen watching her silhouette in the blue light of her laptop screen. The kettle on the stove hadn't been used in weeks. She'd switched to expensive cold brew now. Even her coffee had leveled up. I set my phone down, poured what was left of yesterday's coffee into a chipped mug, and leaned against the counter. It was the 27th transfer since she enrolled in grad school, not counting the time I cleared my savings when her startup crashed, or when I sold my truck to cover her relocation, or when I took a third job because she said, if I pause now, I may never catch up again. She never asked for payback, but she always knew I'd say yes. Evan, she murmured, barely lifting her head. I turned. Yeah, I'm up. Did it go through? Yeah. She nodded once, didn't smile, just turned back to the screen and kept typing. There was a time when she would have wrapped her arms around me, whispered something ridiculous like, we're unstoppable. Now it was just routine. She needed money. I provided it. That was the rhythm. That was the deal. Except no one ever said it out loud. I walked back to the bedroom and sat at the edge of the bed, the springs groaning under my weight. The nightstand drawer was already open. Some part of me must have known I'd end up here. Inside was a folder, faded yellow. Inside the folder were receipts, not because I planned to use them, but because I once imagined we'd laugh over them someday. Look what we made it through. Look how far we came. I pulled one out, $3,200, winter quarter, 2020. I remembered how I got that money. Sold the truck I rebuilt with my father before he passed. Took the bus through 3 states of snow and bitter wind. I got bronchitis that winter. She sent me soup from DoorDash and a voice message saying, I hate that I can't take care of you the way you take care of me. I replayed that message 100 times. That message doesn't exist anymore. I put the paper back, closed the drawer, and laid down, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. I had always believed that love, real love, was quiet, enduring, sacrificial. But maybe that belief had become a kind of fiction too. Maybe all I had left was proof that I showed up, even if she stopped showing up long ago. Ever given someone everything they needed, only to realize you were no longer part of what they wanted? The auditorium smelled like floor wax and fresh programs. Clara sat on stage in a sea of navy gowns and power smiles, her cap pinned perfectly, her posture rigid with purpose. When they called her name, Clara Elise Monroe, MBA with honors, I stood and clapped. Not loud, just enough. A few heads turned, some families brought signs. One guy let off an air horn. I just smiled, hands aching from too many late nights tightening bolts, and thought to myself, we did it. She never looked for me. Afterward, the crowd spilled into the courtyard, buzzing with phone cameras and cheap champagne. I carried her flowers, white lilies, her favorite. At least they used to be. She hadn't mentioned them in a while. Maybe she outgrew those too. There he is, she said when she finally spotted me. Her voice was high but clipped. She barely let me hug her before turning to a group of colleagues in sharp suits and rented heels. Guys, this is Evan. He's been with me through all of it. They smiled politely. One of them, Raina, I think, raised an eyebrow. Oh, are you in finance too? No, I said simply. Clara didn't jump in, didn't add, he runs his own shop, or he put me through school. She just looked down at her phone and said, Raina's with Elix Growth Partners. We're going to a rooftop mixer next week. I nodded, even though the words didn't mean much to me. One of the guys laughed. You bringing Evan? Clara smiled too quickly. Maybe. He's not big on corporate stuff. I can suit up, I said. Everyone laughed. I wasn't joking. Later that night back home, I placed her cap on the dresser. She was still in the bathroom, removing layers of makeup with practiced swipes. I watched her reflection from the bed. Her earrings sparkled, the kind I bought her last Christmas, but she hadn't worn them until today. You looked proud today, I said. She didn't answer immediately. Then, yeah, I guess I was. You should be. She met my eyes in the mirror. It felt big, like the start of something. It is. But I don't want to slow down now. I feel like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. I nodded. She added quieter. And I know this next phase might look different. That stopped me. What do you mean? She hesitated, dabbing her cheek. I mean, balance. It's going to be more intense. I'll be on the road a lot. Networking, projects. I'll be here, I said, like always. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. 2 weeks later, she got the offer from Trevix Consulting, a firm with clients in 7 countries and a reputation for fast-track leadership. 6 figures, relocation optional, a signing bonus that could have covered every loan she'd ever had. She didn't tell me right away. I found out because I saw the offer letter open on her laptop, minimized behind a spreadsheet. When I asked, she blinked, then smiled like it was no big deal. I was waiting for the right time, she said. What would have been the right time? I don't know, after dinner, after you weren't stressed? I'm not stressed. You always look tired lately. I took a breath. You got everything you wanted, Clara. That's not stress. That's the look of someone who thought we'd celebrate together. She crossed her arms. Why does this feel like an attack? I didn't answer. I just walked out, sat on the porch, and listened to the slow tick of the wind chimes I'd hung up last spring. We used to sit out here and dream together. Now she didn't even notice them ringing. She started spending nights in the office, weekends on video calls. I'd cook and leave her plate in the microwave. Most mornings it was still there, untouched. One night she came home around 11:30, heels in her hand, hair down, eyes glazed. I was up doing books for the garage. She kissed my head and said, "Don't wait up anymore. I don't want you losing sleep for me." "I'm not losing sleep," I said. "I'm waiting because we used to talk." She smiled faintly. "We can talk on Saturday." That was 4 Saturdays ago. It was a Wednesday when I found the separate checking account. The app was still open on her phone, next to our grocery list. It was under her name only. Recent deposits, her Trevix bonus, recent purchases, designer clothes, airport lounges, a networking retreat in Aspen. None of that had come through our joint account. She didn't even mention it. That night I asked, "Did you get the bonus?" Her eyes flicked up from her laptop. "Yeah, last week." "You didn't say anything." "I meant to. We used to toast with pizza rolls for less." She laughed, then looked serious. "Evan, I just didn't want to make you feel weird. I didn't want money to be a thing between us." I paused. It's never been a thing, until now. She didn't reply. She went back to typing. I sat alone in the kitchen later that night, folder open again, added a few more receipts, made a column for things I never planned to include. Therapy copays, Uber rides, borrowed books I never asked her to return. The total now read $812,460.83. I didn't add it to make her feel guilty. I added it to make sure I hadn't imagined how much I gave. How do you know when a partnership stops being ours and becomes hers, but with your help? The first time she left me out of a story, I almost missed it. It was during a Saturday dinner at a fusion place downtown, one of those trendy spots that serves shrimp tacos on granite slabs and pours water into recycled wine bottles. Clara had insisted we try it. She said it was where her team liked to unwind. I didn't have a team, just 2 mechanics named Darnell and Pete, who preferred barbecue and beer, not duck confit on microgreens. I didn't complain. I wore the blazer she once said made me look serious but kind, let her pick the wine, and nodded along while the conversation bounced around our end of the table like a loose tennis ball. "So when you started the move to Trevix, was it hard transitioning?" one of her coworkers asked. Clara smiled, confident, polished. "Honestly, it was a whirlwind. I moved cities, started consulting 2 weeks after finals, barely had time to unpack, but it forced me to grow fast. I waited for her to glance at me to say, 'We moved,' or Evan helped keep me sane during it. She didn't. The words hung in the air like steam above a hot plate, rising, vanishing. I looked down at my untouched appetizer. Somewhere between her plate of seaweed hummus and my untouched beer, I realized I had become background. After dinner, she hugged everyone twice. When we got back to the car, she tossed her purse in the back seat, pulled out her phone, and said, "They loved you. You were quiet but charming." "I wasn't trying to be charming," I said. She smirked. "That's what made it work." We drove home in silence, and she didn't notice. The second time was worse. She posted a photo on LinkedIn, a professional headshot taken on her company's off-site retreat. She looked stunning, poised in a gray power dress, captioned with something like, "3 years ago, I was a barista with big dreams. Now I'm consulting for clients I used to admire from afar." 57 comments, all praising her drive, her vision, her transformation. No mention of the man who covered her rent when she couldn't make tips. No nod to the person who edited her business school essays at 2 a.m. No acknowledgement of the life she'd built on the shoulders of someone else's sleep deprivation. I didn't say anything, but I saved the post. By the time autumn came, Clara had a whole new language. She said things like, "I need space to realign, and we need to talk strategy for our shared future." Her sentences grew more careful. Every response felt pre-written. Even her affection came in pre-approved increments. One night, she sat on the edge of our bed, dressed in a silk blouse and tailored pants. I had just come home from the shop, grease under my nails, smelling like exhaust and rain. "I think we should try living a little more independently," she said. I blinked. "What does that mean?" "Just not so enmeshed. I want to see how I move without defaulting to you. We live together. Emotionally." I stared at her. "You think I've been a crutch?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, a loving one, but still, something I lean on when I shouldn't." There it was, the rebrand. I was no longer a partner. I was scaffolding, temporary support for a building she was ready to unveil. "I don't resent you," she added, almost gently, "but I need to own my life now." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask her where my life went in the process. Instead, I said, "And what should I do? Wait in case you miss the old foundation?" She didn't answer. The third time came like a whisper, but it felt like a scream. It was mid-November when I opened a padded envelope that came addressed to Clara. She was traveling, some innovation summit in Seattle. I thought it might be something important, something personal. Inside was a book, The Self-Made Woman Breaking Systems, Owning Your Worth. Tucked inside was a handwritten note from her mentor at Trevix. To Clara, "You are everything this generation needs in a leader. Self-made, self-sufficient, self-possessed. Keep flying. Mira." Self-made. I stared at those words like they were a joke written in ink. Then I got up, walked to the cabinet, and pulled down the yellow folder. I didn't even have to count anymore. I knew the number by heart. She came back from Seattle 3 days later, tanned, rested, glowing from compliments and cocktails I hadn't been invited to. We sat across from each other at dinner. I made chicken, lemon garlic, her old favorite. She barely touched it. "How was the trip?" I asked. "Energizing," she said. "I met a VC who wants to develop my own brand." I nodded. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," she tilted her head. "That a good thing or a bad thing?" "I'm not sure anymore," I said. "Depends who you bring with you when you go." She paused. "I want you to be proud of me." "I am, but that's not the same as being included." She didn't respond. She reached for her water glass instead, and I realized then, she wasn't leaving me. She already had. How do you stay whole when the person you loved rewrites your role in their story without telling you first? It started with the Wi-Fi. The autopay failed one Friday morning. I got the email while opening up the garage, just a quick notification from the provider. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but when I checked the bank account, I saw what I'd done 2 nights before. Quietly removed my direct deposit from the joint account and rerouted it to one under my name. I hadn't made a speech. I hadn't slammed a door. I just stopped carrying the whole weight. Clara didn't mention it. Not that day. Not that week. I waited to see how long it would take her to notice the groceries were no longer magically replenished, the utilities unpaid, the subscriptions bouncing back. She didn't ask. She simply opened a new grocery delivery account with a premium service and bought her own food. The house was now split, not physically, not legally, but functionally. She even had her own detergent. I found it tucked behind mine, labeled "Delicates Only," with her name written in Sharpie like she was in a college dorm. The same woman who once used my flannel shirts as pajamas now wanted separate fabric softener. A few days later, she left a folder out on the kitchen counter. It was one of those expensive leather-bound kinds, Trevix branding embossed in gold, slim silver clasp. She never left paperwork lying around. But she was rushing to catch a flight to Denver, and probably assumed I wouldn't look. I didn't plan to. But when I opened the fridge that evening and saw a takeout container labeled Clara Do Not Touch, something cracked. I went back to the folder, opened it carefully. Inside were several documents, onboarding contracts, project scopes, NDAs. But one page stuck out. It was an updated personal declaration form required for international consulting travel. The heading read, Financial and Personal Independence Statement. And there, in her own handwriting, marital status, single. Financial dependency, none. Single, none. 2 boxes checked like they were nothing, like I was nothing. No footnotes, no clarification, no legally married but just an erasure, cold and efficient. When she got back from Denver, I was in the garage, wiping down tools that didn't need cleaning. She came out still in heels, suitcase thudding behind her. "I brought you coffee," she said, holding out a cup. It was from her favorite overpriced chain. I took it but didn't sip. "Did you need to put single on the Trevix form?" She didn't flinch. "It's just a checkbox. For international work, it's easier. Less legal strings." "You're still married," she shrugged. "It's not like they ask for a marriage certificate. It's a formality." "Not to me." She sighed, stepped closer. "Evan, we're not depending on each other financially. You made that pretty clear when the bills stopped getting paid." "You never asked why." "Because I already knew." "Then say it," I said. "Say what this is turning into." She looked down at the concrete floor. "I don't know what this is turning into. I just know what I can't carry anymore." I nodded. "Neither can I." We stood there, the wind from the cracked side door lifting dust in slow, lazy spirals around our shoes. No yelling, no begging. Just the kind of silence that fills your lungs and makes everything heavier. She turned to leave, then paused. "You think I'm the villain, don't you?" I didn't answer. Because villains know what they're doing. Clara didn't see herself as cruel. She saw herself as evolving. After she left the garage, I sat on the workbench and pulled out the folder I'd kept. Mine, not hers. Inside were copies of every payment I'd ever made on her behalf. Not to guilt her, not to weaponize anything, just to remember. I flipped to the last page and wrote down one more thing. Date, October 17th, action, withdrew from shared account reason, she already had. Then I closed the folder for good. The days after that were different, not colder, just efficient. We no longer talked over coffee. She made hers with oat milk. I went back to diner drip. Our toothbrushes didn't share a cup. Our laundry baskets stood in separate corners of the bathroom. And our dinners became silent performances of cohabitation. 2 plates, 2 rooms, 2 lives. One night I came home to find her hosting a Zoom call with her new team. I stood just outside the office, listening. Honestly, I got here because I stopped waiting for people to believe in me and started betting on myself. They applauded. One of them said, "That's so brave." I stood there in the hallway with my jaw clenched, then walked past without saying a word. I didn't slam the door. Bravery, apparently, now came in the form of rewriting history. A week later, she asked to borrow my car. Hers was in the shop and she had a meeting across town. I tossed her the keys. She blinked. "That's it?" "What do you want me to say?" She hesitated. "Nothing, I guess. It's just, you used to ask questions." I nodded. "And you used to give answers." She left 10 minutes later. No hug, no wave. And for the first time, I didn't watch her leave. When someone unchecks your name from their life, do you fight to stay or let them live with the blank space they created? It had been nearly 6 weeks since Clara and I stopped being we. No arguments, no slammed doors, just small decisions executed without discussion, like how she stopped leaving her schedule on the fridge, or how I stopped replacing the light bulb in her closet when it went out. I let her walk into the dark and find her own switch, and she did. I think that's what she liked most about our new dynamic. No noise, just clean, frictionless detachment. But then she asked for something she shouldn't have. It was a Wednesday evening. I'd just come back from the shop, sweat still drying on the back of my neck. The house smelled like reheated noodles and expensive candle wax. Clara was at the kitchen table, laptop open, wearing that beige blazer that made her look like she was always halfway through a TED Talk. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Hey," she said, typing. "Do you have a minute?" I nodded, dropped my bag by the door. She tapped a few keys, then spun the laptop toward me. "A contract, no greeting, no warm-up. It's a short-term venture. I'm partnering with a group of investors. They're launching a startup fund for underrepresented founders, and they're looping in key supporters as silent guarantors. I didn't speak. She continued, it's symbolic more than anything. We just need a few clean credit backers with financial history. You wouldn't have to be involved. No risk, just name and signature. I blinked slowly. You're asking me to co-sign a venture you haven't even discussed with me. I'm not asking you to invest, she said quickly. Just lend your name. You have a solid credit score. It helps with optics. I stared at her. She said it like she was asking to borrow a blender. My name, which she'd scrubbed off her international forms, her public bios, her life. Now it had value again. Do you remember what I do for a living, I asked. She tilted her head. What? Do you remember what I do? What hours I work, the customers I deal with, the problems I fix? Of course I do, Evan. Why are you? Because you haven't asked me about my life in months, but now you want my signature. She straightened. This isn't personal, it's just strategic. That's the problem. She closed the laptop. Evan, I thought we'd move past this. I stepped closer, calm but clear. No, Clara, you moved through it. I stood still. I let you. I watched you build a world where I didn't exist, but now that world needs a little scaffolding again, and suddenly I'm visible. That's not fair. I know, I said. Neither was erasing me. She stood up, frustration creeping into her face. I thought you'd support me. I did, I said, to the tune of $800,000. You just didn't notice that support came with me attached. So you're punishing me now? No, I said. I'm just not giving you something that cost me more than you're willing to acknowledge. She went quiet. In the silence, I felt something rare, not anger, not regret, relief. Because when you say no for the first time to someone who's grown used to your yes, their silence becomes louder than any apology. 2 days later, the fallout came. I wasn't home when she decided to have the conversation. She texted me instead. A simple message. If you can't support me now, I think we need space. Real space. No period, no punctuation, just a declaration. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because there was nothing left to say that I hadn't already given, already said, already swallowed. I moved into a sublet the next week. 1 bedroom, wood-paneled walls, a squeaky mattress, and a leaky faucet that echoed through the night. But it was quiet. Honestly quiet. Not the kind you fight through, but the kind that lets you breathe. Clara didn't call, didn't check in. But 2 weeks later, a piece of mail arrived at the shop. It was from the startup fund. My name had been replaced by someone else's on the guarantee line. I'd been replaced efficiently, like I was never essential, just convenient. And that's when I knew. She never needed a partner. She needed a platform. And I was done being the floor. When you finally say no to someone who's used to your yes, what's left is who they really are. The town I moved to didn't have much going for it. Just a strip mall, 2 diners, and a barbershop that still used cash only. But the garage sat on a quiet road under a faded sign that read, Fowler Auto, since 1968. The owner, a Vietnam vet named Russ, hired me after one conversation and handed me the keys when he retired 3 months later. You care about people, he said. That's rarer than knowing carburetors. I renamed it Evan's Honest Garage. Not for branding, just for truth. I never changed my number. Clara never used it. Some part of me wondered if she would. Maybe not to say sorry, but to ask something like, was it really that bad? Or did I misread the whole thing? But silence was her final move. And I'd learned to respect the choices people make when they think you're no longer useful. I didn't block her. I just stopped checking. It was 6 months after I left when I saw her again. I didn't recognize her at first. She walked into the garage with her assistant. New hair, new shoes, same sharp presence. She didn't see me behind the lifted truck. It was the assistant who spoke. Clara Monroe, looking for a quote on a vintage restoration. I stepped out, wiping my hands on a towel. Clara looked up and froze. For a full second, she didn't move. Then, Evan. I nodded. Miss Monroe. She flinched. The assistant, sensing something, glanced between us. Do you two? We know each other, Clara said quickly. I said nothing. She took a slow breath. I didn't expect to run into you here. I live here. She looked around, taking in the shop. Modest, clean sunlight filtering through a dusty skylight. You're running this? I nodded. You always said you wanted your own place. I didn't answer. She placed the keys to her car on the counter. It needs a new carburetor. The old one's shot. I'll take a look. There was a pause. Then she said softer, I looked for you, After. No, you didn't, I said. Not cruel, just honest. She blinked. I looked up the project, I added. The fund you wanted my name on, it folded within 3 months. Lawsuits, a cosigner defaulted. She swallowed. You always read the fine print. You never did. She hesitated, then said, I never hated you, Evan. I know. I didn't plan to erase you. You didn't have to plan it. You just did it. That shut her up. And then she said the one thing I never expected her to say. I was scared that if I gave you credit, people would think I didn't earn it. I looked at her and felt something that surprised me. Pity. You did earn it, I said, but you forgot who helped you when it wasn't worth anything yet. She nodded slowly. Then she turned to go, stopped, and said, I'm glad you didn't sign that contract. I said, so am I. She paused at the door. You're really not angry? No, I said. You have to care deeply to stay angry, and I don't live in that place anymore. She looked down, nodded once, and left. 2 weeks later, her assistant came back to pick up the car. I left a note in the glove compartment. Everything's fixed. You're good to go. P.S. Keep checking your oil every 2,000 miles. No one will do that part for you. E. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was peace. These days, I open the shop at 7 a.m. sharp. I teach a couple of teenagers on the weekends. Kids who remind me too much of who I used to be. Willing, loyal, lost in someone else's future. One of them asked me last week why I didn't wear a wedding ring. I said, because love, when it's real, doesn't erase you. They didn't get it, but one day they will. I don't miss Clara. I miss who she was before she turned her ambition into armor. But even that memory gets quieter each month. There's a peace in building something with your own name on the door, in being the only person responsible for whether the lights stay on. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. And I'm done giving my name to people who only remember it when they need a signature. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't a comeback. It's never needing one. I don't tell this story because I'm bitter. I tell it because for too long, I thought love meant giving until you disappeared. But the truth is, if someone only values you when they need something, they never truly saw you in the first place. You can be kind and still set boundaries. You can love someone and still choose to walk away. If this story hit home for you, let me know where you're watching from, or share what part of the story stayed with you most. And if it didn't, I'd still love to hear why. If you found value here, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. We've got more stories that speak to the parts people often leave quiet.